everyone. Elections are often considered as a festival of democracy, and if elections are a festival of democracy, then they are best celebrated by news organizations. The festival became really grand this year. In 2023, 9 state elections, massive celebration for India and definitely for the news organizations. Whether we consider it as vital information or as entertainment, news is something that is being watched by young and old, by people across the country, and especially when it comes to elections, people are glued to the television, waiting to watch the fate of their aligned political party. Just as the dust settles down on the 9 state elections, there is the grandest electoral battleground coming up, the Lok Sabha election. From the initial campaigning to the nail-biting counting day, news publications find themselves at the forefront of the elections, disseminating crucial information to an engaged and diverse audience. How do news organizations capitalize this? Manoj sir, would you like to start by telling us?
Thank you very much for the opportunity, afaqs, and as the topic goes, the panel discussion which we have, election bonanza. So let me just put it this way, let me just take a little back, how these elections started happening in India and where are we standing right now. So you'll understand the perspective of how it relates to the monies which is also coming to the broadcasters. So way back in 1998, when EVM came into the picture, before which the paper ballot used to happen. So why that also started, there's a long story. If I'll take another 10 minutes but I'll cut to the short. When 1998 EVM started in India, the pure purpose of that to, kind of conclude the voting in one day, which earlier used to happen in at least 7-8 days. That was a real more monetizing opportunity for the news channel versus what we have it right now. Because in a day one, as far as counting day is concerned, you'll have to wrap it up everything and get the advertiser interest also. So I'm saying look at both the fronts together. And right now if you have to look at the last 2019 election which happened in India, general election, there were about 912 million eligible voters in India, out of which 67% of voting turnout happened in India. So if you ask me, real per se on the rating system, how many people were watching it? If I have to, kind of assume on my way on counting day, at least half of them were watching news channels. So do we really get that kind of money on the channels? If you ask me, the answer is yes or no. But yes, when election comes in, all the broadcasters put their neck into it and ensure that we get that money going on for the broadcaster. That's if I have to suffer.
Gaurav sir, would you like to chip in? What are your thoughts?
So, unlike TV, we are a traditional media house, right? So, print and digital. Print has its own way of monetizing, elections is not one day, right? One analog is right. Earlier 5-day test match, now it is a 1 day. But for us, the elections start much sooner when they are announced, and in fact, elections when they happen are part of the yearly AOPs. The sales commitments, the editorial commitments, the programming part, all of it is, decided right at the beginning of the year. If you know the dates, mostly the elections are going to happen in, national elections, state elections, whatever that elections are, right? So the prep starts much earlier. So for us, at least on digital, it is very, very accountable. And like Manoj said, if you have to, compare the audience growth, is it the same as the revenue growth? Really not. It doesn't happen like that, right? But if you capitalize well, from the prep time to the time the governments are formed, the counting happens and all of that, yes, there is a fair bit of spike that comes in across audiences and also on the revenue part, right? And and it's a mix. The government spend, the political parties spend, the corporate spend, because the corporates know ultimately it's about getting the eyeballs, right? And they know there is going to be a spike. So everybody chips in, and yes, very well said. Elections are a festival we celebrate. Yeah.
So just to add to it, what Gaurav has said, any form of news that you are into right now, for anyone to kind of monetize those property during election, I call it as a Kumbh Mela, which comes every 5 years.
That doesn't happen every year, specifically for the general election. So the preparation for the elections really starts in the newsroom at least about 7-8 months in advance. You know, how you want to monetize, how you want to put that content, all of that, that brainstorming goes on a daily basis. Leave aside what sort of a form of news you are serving to the people, just to add what Gaurav has said.
Beyond the regular mediums, the traditional mediums, news is also being disseminated through social media. How can it be effectively utilized to enhance the reach and impact of election-related content?
So I'll take that. Social media is a very important part of any media house right now, even for, TV and also across digital. Even the print the print businesses also have social media handles, right? One, it gives you a pulse. What is your audience wanting in terms of content, right? What are the trends? What kind of programming should you? It gives a lot of clue, right? Opinions and polls when we run, right? I mean, it's a standard programming part on the social media channels. You do a lot of contest polls to try and understand where it's swinging. So for us, when we look at social media, the monetization social media is largely stopped, right? So if you know that there's hardly any money on when you put content, but it's the engagement and the users, your brand that gets distributed, right? News anyway is very perishable, right? It's not relevant tomorrow. So you want to reach across to a larger spectrum of people. And then in between that, you try, how do you get those people on social media to come onto your platforms to have a detailed answer to whatever that they're looking at. Right? So they're very important. You can't run away from them. There's an entire, range of audiences which are only consuming social media. They're not coming onto TV. They're not probably going on to any news website to look at news. Twitter itself, I'm myself a very big believer. I look at Twitter every 10 minutes, and there I get a perspective of right wing, left wing, everything. Whatever's breaking comes onto Twitter first rather than any TV. Right? So you have to be there. You have to have a very clear strategy. You need to know, what your audiences are and what is it that you need to be serving them up with. So very important for us.
Right. So like Sir said, to engage the audience, you are going on to multiple other platforms. Of course, beyond social media, there's also podcasts, other platforms that you're trying to reach out to them. Sir said that these platforms are not getting monetized. Manoj, sir, would you like to tell us how are you all looking at ways to monetize these other mediums where you are trying to engage the audience?
As far as monetizing is concerned, look, the industry itself is fighting for the fact that we should come with the unified measurement system, okay? So you really don't know, if a channel presenting a news, where all my audience is consuming those content. For example, there is a classification of saying that on the social media you get a very snacky content. People get attracted to the smaller sort of videos there. So all of us, what we started doing as a broadcaster, we started putting those 30-second or 60-second videos there on social media to understand that if at all people are watching those smaller, format and thereby to, monetize as well. But for me, just to look at the overall ecosystem right now for the news channels, elections per se, if I have to put it across, the last 5 state elections which happened predominantly, 3 states were pretty important for the Hindi news channel. I represent the Hindi news channel, so I can talk about that. All of us, what we predicted for our revenues and the ratings to go up, it did happen. But with the fact that the way nowadays, the broadcaster are presenting the news, it's also a question mark. Wherever we go, we kind of tend to fight this phenomena of that I don't want to be present where the negative set of news are going on. That's a separate debate that Anita ji is looking at, smiling me right now, that we tend to have that debates or discussion offline many a time. I think that's where the real battle is going on. And whenever we talk to our other fellow at the senior level, at the broadcasting side also, we tend to discuss this fact that how we disseminate the fake news problem, which is, everyone is facing it. So first, that you bring that credible news on your platform. How do you do it? You talk to any broadcasting site, CEOs or CBOs, they will say that, boss, my channel is one of the credible channel. I am the number one in this platform. I am the number one on social media. I am the number one on YouTube. I am the number one in BARC. It becomes very confusing for the advertiser, where to look at it, which data to consume. Because the content is more or less same. Now we are not reached to a level in India where the news broadcaster started to produce a different set of content or digital. I would say 20% of them are still doing it. But the content more or less is same consumed in a different format altogether.
So in what way then can you use these, you spoke about data, can you use data analytics and audience and insights to create more targeted content for your audience?
Oh yeah, I mean, data is very important, and the good part is digital's as data savvy as it can get, right? I mean, the insights that digital platforms give you, nobody else does, right? Google Analytics gives you all the information, but it's a lot of it is post-mortem in the sense, whatever's happened, what kind of content has been consumed and all of that, what are the audience cohorts, what are they consuming and all. So that, obviously gives us a leverage in terms of, programming, as to what is being consumed. Apart from that, real time, once the users on your website, the algorithms play a very critical role. Your DMPs, with the audience cohorts help you, distribute the right content to the right person at the right time, right? So, and, the amount of content that is being produced is phenomenal. While a user, when he comes onto your website, for an average news website, if it's being consumed on the open web, not on the app, the average is about 2 to 3 page views that they'll give you. From 1 page view to 4 page views, the differentiation is the data, right? If you understand your audiences and serve the right content, that makes the difference in terms of, in terms of the consumption, the way it is happening.
Manoj sir, what are the most effective monetization strategies that you can bring in during the election cycle, and both traditional and digital?
So, like we were just discussing a while ago about the elections. So the best way to put the strategy forward to the advertiser is to reach out to them well in advance. How well you wanted to put into the context of putting their brand in a different manner, which they also can get benefit out of it. Because like Gaurav also said that election is not about a one-day phenomena, okay, just a counting day. You get a minimum 6 months of visibility of any news channel that you go, because the plan happens well in advance. There you get about 6 months of programming available on the channel. How do you do it? Let me just give you a small example. The way the news channels has been looked at so far, that predominantly, people buy news channels for the male audience. This is what it's been perceived so long, but not the case any longer. There are female audience also which coming into the news channel. There are data to prove that. So, if you have your strategy right into the place that how you want to monetize, and obviously this is not the right platform that I would talk about the strategy, what we thinking it internally to monetize right now. But I can tell you for sure, if you have a right context in your mind, that every advertiser that you're approaching with a different mindset. For example, if I have to go to Anita and talk about Patanjali, I have to be very, very clear that what I am going to talk to her. It should not be the same medicines that I'm going to give it to her also, that this is what I want to do it. And similarly to other brands. Sorry, I can see Anita is sitting in front of me. So again and again, I'm taking her name. So it's about that different strategy that you have to have for a different set of advertisers.
Right. Both of you spoke about how that 6 months in the run-up to the elections, you get a spike in the viewership. But post the elections, once the elections are over, how do you sustain that momentum that you had got during the election?
It's natural. It will happen, right? There will be a slowdown, at least for the content that was related to the elections, right? But it's just like what broadcasting does, one super show after another. So you have to find ways in terms of how do you sustain that programming. But yeah, I mean, general interest of the public, whosoever has been following your coverage, naturally that at least that topic-based interest goes down and the viewership will go down. But I mean, India is a country of news. There's so much that keeps happening. So, I mean, there will be a drop, but nothing that can't be sustained, right? So.
No, sir, is there something that you all do differently to ensure that those eyeballs that you've got during the election, they stay with you?
Like I said, I would not really discuss the strategy that what we gonna be doing it, but I can give you a small idea to it. For example, we have partnered about 4,000 people on ground for general election, which no news channel would have thought of doing it. So we have about 4,000 news informer on the ground for general election. There are about 543 Lok Sabha seats that you have to cover. It's not about that you are a HSM based channel, so you have to focus only on Hindi market. You will have to look at down south also. You will have to look at northeast also, which probably When you have your manpower on ground, you can get that news very fast. For example, on counting day, the last counting which happened in the state election, if you were to watch top 5 channels, all of them were showing a different result at the same time. How was possible? Because a particular channel had so many informer on the ground. For example, if I have to talk about Bharat 24 that I represent, we had about 4,000 people reporting for us on ground, the informers, which were giving us the news very, very fast and accurate. We were the first one to predict who's coming at where. And the seats were what we were showing versus others were pretty, different than what it was. So it's about how you present this information accurately on those particular days. That's also defined where you stand in front of advertisers' eyes also.
And sir, beyond advertising, does this time also help you in boost subscribers? Do you see a increase in subscriber revenue?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. If done right with a proper plan, there is a lot that you can do apart from the display advertising, right? When you get sponsorships, you can actually get whole of your editorial programming also funded through that, right? Subscriptions will happen, data and your product comes into play there. In fact, a lot of partnerships, so we do, along with the, normal sponsorships and display advertising, we've been able to do, literacy programs, right, which have been sponsored by, who value the elections being to be done in the fair way, where people need to be educated. So we've been able to do that, right? So display advertising, and another thing that you can do from there along with subscription is getting your registrations and first party data, right? Which helps you in the longer run. The more you know about your user, and obviously registrations is a great way of doing that. So the number of people registering for a free for all news websites like gold. So all of that helps in the long run.
Right. And we spoke about, being present across different mediums and engaging audience in different mediums. How can brands make the most of that? Manoj sir, would you like to speak about that? How can brands make the most of all the other mediums on which you are engaging the audience?
It's about, like I said, the way you want to approach to a particular brand, okay, and the kind of customized solution that you're going to. I can relate to one example that coming into my mind right now. I remember one hosiery brand from Eastern Market, okay, in my previous organization. Their problem during the election that he told me that, we spend a lot of money behind our dealer distributor, taking them to international conferences and doing X, Y, Z things to them to get their loyalty and all of that, etc., etc. How do we ensure that through your news channel, we kind of engage them very well on the platform? So we came up with real clear strategy that you engage them through social, plus on air also. The strategy was very clear. You run a primary sales contest within your organization, and whosoever qualify get the chance to come on TV and to address us to all of them that go out and vote for your state. So it's how you engage the different set of advertisers. That's also depend. You know what? The brands have the money. Only thing that you'll have to go out, give them a right solution, which is really conducive for the brand on a longer term also. The short format of going and selling those FCT and non-FCT are really a passe in our at least broadcasting side. Every penny which has been spent right now, they will ask for that ROI, not only in terms of number, but how you engage also their different set of stakeholders. The stakeholders, not only the consumer. For them, these stakeholders are the dealer distributors also. So this is how, I would say that we approach to the brands.
So Manoj sir spoke about how news genre was traditionally a male genre, and largely it would attract brands also like BFSI category and categories that were largely targeting male. Sir says that trend has changed. Have you noticed that during these 9 state elections this year?
No, so it's been a mixed bag, right? Internet penetration also is about 55-45 in terms of the male-female usage, right? Election traditionally is considered as a male targeted programming. We've seen a little change in terms of the demographics, but not much, if I have to put it like that. It is still, on the election-related content, we still get, whatever the analytics that we get, it's still very, very male-dominated, right? But it's not that we don't cover elections from a women's perspective, right? At Jagran, we run a website which is a women's website, right? And in between that women's website, there is, how does elections and how does the agenda affect their lifestyle, that we get that covered. And when we go out and sell sponsorship packages, that section is also included along with the mainstream website that goes out on the sponsorship.
Just add to it what Gaurav has just said. Hi, welcome Aditi.
Hi, ma'am.
So just add to it what Gaurav has just said. And what you also started with the question is that predominantly news genre is looked at for male buying as such, that male viewers are pretty much higher. But if I have to give you the stats of last general election 2019 which happened, there were more female turnout voters than what it was in last so many decades. So it's not that the broadcaster on the news side or whatever form you are present at, not producing those content for the female viewers, etc. But the fact that you'll have to look at the viewers from a viewer angle, not that the gender, that which set of gender is looking at me. So I can say that, all set of audience are currently watching news channel, I can tell you, and we can go along and debate. And now we have Aditi, we can probably ask that question to her also.
Yeah, ma'am. So we were talking about how the news genre has traditionally been a male, has generally attracted the male audience.
Right.
And Manoj sir was saying that that's changing now. So we wanted to understand from you, what is the trend that you saw during these 9 state elections this year? And what do you think news channels need to do to attract more female audience and attract more female-centric brands?
So I think before we talk about news per se, I think let's step back a bit and look at ourselves as a country. We are a very young country, and young people today are used to being on top of things. So I think that's one big trend which is happening. The second thing is, as a larger societal change now, there are more people who are staying by themselves. So they want to know more. Unlike where you may have been in a society which was very closely guarded and very traditional, now people are open to a lot more things. So a lot of things are changing in society as a whole. And I think news rests in that culture, in that context. So therefore, the whole consumption of what's happening in the world around us, what should we know? I think hence news in a larger way, I think that's become important. And then if we start looking at the context of what news channels should do, I think they have already done quite a bit. That's why if you look at what we call hard programming and soft news, there is a mix. If you look at other platforms, and you look at the way today news is packaged and presented, there are many elements which make it palatable to people who may not be following the news in its entirety, in a very, very, what would one say, in its most prime kind of a format. There's a lot of other ways that news is packaged and presented, which allows for people to understand and makes it more palatable. Yeah. So I think channels are doing some bits of that. But as we move into maybe the context of elections, yeah, explaining the impact of what's happening to people in their lives. I think that is what connects the news, because otherwise it's just data and facts. Yeah? And there is excitement around, okay, what's happening in my constituency or in my state. But beyond that, when you start talking about what is a particular candidature or what is a particular party bringing and how will your life change. And I think if channels can bring that element alive, that would make for a much more, a stronger following of content versus just, trying to get very piecemeal sensational news. So I think that's the piece perhaps if content creators could look at, it would hold us in good stead.
Right. In your earlier panel, you were speaking about integrated measurement, and today, and now we were speaking about how news is not just in its traditional print and television, but it's also being done on digital, there are different engaging formats like podcasts and social media. How do you think integrated measurement, especially now with the Lok Sabha elections coming, can change things for news organizations?
So if you heard the previous panel, I think we ended on a very interesting note saying people on the panel need to come, or representation of what the people on the panel are showing, they need to come together. So I don't think before the Lok Sabha elections, we are going to have any integrated measurement. It's unfortunately not going to happen. That said, I think when we look at it from brands and advertisers' point of view, how are they going to start leveraging? I think people are going to have their own mix in terms of the lens they want to bring. So we have different kinds of clients, and the conversations are around, do you want to stand for a theme and that's the partnership you want to do? Or do you just want the reach because news is going to be, the biggest reach platform in a way. If this year was the year of sports, next year is already it started with the regional elections, and next year is going to be the year of news in that sense. So it will be a huge reach platform. So what's the purpose for a brand or an advertiser and how they want to leverage that? I think that's going to be the discussion on the table for all of us. That because it's not something you can walk away from. It's such an impactful thing for the whole country. You can't walk away from it. And when we start talking about, like you said, news could be print or television or digital, I think it's important to understand the genesis of where information comes from, because one of the big things in news is credibility. How do I trust this source? Is this a credible source? And that's where some of the traditional so-called news people, so whether it's print, whether it's linear TV, some of them have very strong hold in terms of the credibility or the trust that they still have. Irrespective of, how many people are following them, not following them, I'm not going into that. So there is always going to be this mix of credible sources versus just places that you want to check out. But how much do you believe them is still open to question. So that is also going to be something which I think will have a play when we start looking at something like elections. What's the story behind the story? What's the reality? Because people do want to know that. They want to understand that.
Given the importance of engaging the youth in the electoral process, what are some of the things, Gaurav sir, you could tell us, what are some of the ways that news organizations can create more meaningful content for the youth?
So we do a lot of work for the youth, right? I mean, digital, I think Manoj just said, in terms of creating content which is snackable on social media. We have a product which is called Jagran Fatafat. It's meant for youth, because the attention spans are shrinking. And why just youth? I'm not a youth by long means. But even after watching reels, shorts, I find myself that my concentration levels beyond 5 minutes are difficult to hold by. I mean, let's be honest, that is how it has been. So it is imperative that, that's how the consumption's moving. You'll have to figure out what is happening, right? 70% of our audiences on our websites, even including the news and information website, is between 18 and 35, right? So you don't have a choice. To fulfill that, 75% of our edit workforce is also under 27, 28, right? Because unless you know what do people want and how do you make it, and to make it you have to be thinking like themselves, right? For people like me it's difficult because I don't understand the language that Gen Z speaks. So, and it's a very well thought through strategy to have young content writers to be catering to what the audiences want, and also have a product strategy which is targeted to them, right? So not just elections in general as well, right? So we operate news and information's one website that we run. We run an education website. Like I said, we run a ladies lifestyle, again a very young ladies oriented content, and then we also run a health website, right? So across genres, it's the content because the audience is generally young, you'll have to produce, looking at them, what are they consuming.
Just add to it on the closing remarks from my side, because your clock is ticking towards the end of the session. Like I started with the fact that, if you look at the last year, last general election stats which happened in about 950 million eligible voters, and out of which 67-70% were the voter turnout. It was very, very huge, and particularly from the female side, the turnout were the highest amongst the decade. And also to look at from a first-time voter. So in our channel, because pretty young channel, Bharat 24, and when you're young and working in a startup mode, you are allowed to do mistakes. You're allowed to do new form of content, which we put it across to our reporters or the news anchors, that you just try and do the newer stuff, not look at it, what has been done in the past. So, if I have to give you one small example, what we started doing in last state election, we started putting particularly the educational background of the candidate which is with there. So that really, really excites with the younger audience, that the guy that I'm going to vote for, is he also a 10th or 12th pass or not? So that's how you need to create a content which probably, really excite to the younger audience, what the question was. And at the end, I would say that, the future of news looks really, really bright. And thank you very much, Srikanth, for having us here. Thank you very much.
We have 2 minutes. Does anyone want to ask Srikanth, sir?
I've been dying to ask this question. What kind of money do political parties spend on television during election campaign? So I've been wanting to ask this from the first minute. So
I think that the answer that nobody can give you right now, because there is no particular
just ballpark, just whatever. I mean,
so like I said, the number I would not be able to give you, but I can tell you one thing. Particularly to a general election, just to run away, not to give you an exact number, I can give you on the percentage side. Every general election that I have seen at least 3 of them in my career so far. Okay, we have seen largely, historically, at least 35 to 40% of a spike on your regular revenues which happened over the year. So you can probably count the number here and there. Thank you.
So I can give you another fun fact.
Not giving it or talking the number. I hope you understand.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I'll give you another fun fact, Srikanth. So all the money comes in from the state. Political monies are very less at least on the digital side.
Yes. Sir, he wants to ask.
Well, hi, my name is Samir and I'm from Media Buy. I have a question for you, Manoj sir. You've been saying some points which were really liked. There is always a buzz about that exit polls, which is a part of every electoral campaign. And this time, those exit poll which has came for these elections, that has just turned the tables all around when the result has come. How do the news channel actually come up with those particular exit poll pointers? And when the thing just goes in the diverse, I mean, not in as per the results, how do you guys feel at that point of time? How do you think that this is not what we have expected?
Pretty good question. Thank you very much for asking it. You know what? I think you need to look at it from a angle of exit poll. What is that exit poll all about? You need to understand the definition of exit poll. Exit polls are predominantly at the estimation of few thousand people. Okay, and historically, if you look at few exit polls, few channels have been claiming that, okay, whatever we predicted, we got it right. At the end of the day, exit polls are only the estimation based on few thousand people. So that cannot be every time right. Okay, few times, obviously, broadcasters have got it to the point. So exit poll, you need to look at it from that angle only.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Manoj.
Thank you. That's all we have time for.